What is life? Why am I here? How is it all connected? And how am I going to navigate this beautiful but crazy journey? I'm Sylvia and welcome to the Soul Sunshine Podcast. Today I'm talking to Tim Brown. Tim is one of Australia's leading Vedic meditation teachers. Tim believes that the ancient practice of Vedic meditation is now more than ever a valuable, if not necessary, tool. To come into your own mentally, physically and emotionally is a critical skill, and it has to be done anywhere in a short period of time. Meditating on a bus, train, plane, on a couch at home or at the desk at work is not a problem if you know what you're doing. Tim has taught more than 6,000 people to meditate over 20 years of dedicated teaching and has seen his clients become inspired by the clarity, inspiration and calm that comes from their daily meditation practice. Welcome to the Soul Sunshine Podcast, Tim. Thank you so much for being here today.
It's an absolute pleasure, Sylvia. It's lovely to see you and to be sitting together like this, always.
I know, yeah. Thanks for having me in your beautiful space here. It's really nice to do a face-to-face
Yes,
conversation.
much better, huh?
After so many online ones. So
hopefully COVID is in our rear vision mirror.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So today we're going to be talking about Vedic meditation,
yes.
What it is, where does it come from, how does it work and what are the benefits of it.
Yes.
We're going to be exploring how it can be practiced and what it does to us physically, emotionally and mentally.
Great.
We are also talking, Tim, about your journey and how it unfolded to become one of the most sought after Vedic meditation teachers in Australia.
How long have you got, Sylvia?
We've got about an hour.
This could take a while.
That's beautiful. Well, we'll see what we can do.
Yeah.
Look, Tim, we haven't really officially ever met, I think. I used to see Dr. Erin walking downstairs for my chiro appointments, and I remember one of the first sessions I saw her, I looked at all the cards that were down there and I picked up yours, as the meditation card, obviously.
Yeah.
Kind of like, oh, that sounds really interesting. And I followed you ever since and kind of followed your journey a little bit and was always really interested in it. And I've run into you a few times here in the practice.
With your beautiful kids.
With my beautiful little boys that used to interrupt you. So I'm really excited to actually be sitting here today and having this conversation with you.
It's an absolute pleasure, absolute pleasure.
So Tim, if we can just start the conversation with maybe just tell us a little bit about your background and what was it in your life that put you on the path of meditating and ultimately becoming a meditation teacher yourself?
Yes. Well, to give a bit of background, this meditation business was not on my radar at all. I was a country boy from central west New South Wales. I was born out at Orange in central west New South Wales. Lived in a little town called Wellington, New South Wales, not New Zealand.
Not New Zealand.
And my family then moved to Thailand in the early 80s for a couple of years with my father's work, and then we moved back to Canberra, and then I went to boarding school. I got sent off to a boarding school, and it was a very intense rugby school. So I was a rugby player for many, many years. And then I went to Sydney University and I studied agricultural economics. And to be absolutely honest, I studied rugby, drinking beer and chasing girls.
Of course. What else,
if I'm being 100% honest. And I accidentally got a degree on the way through. I had a wonderful time there and got my degree, and then went traveling. Ended up in Central Asia in Uzbekistan. I got a job working in Uzbekistan developing models to privatize agriculture on the former Soviet. This was 1996, 7 and 8. And I ended up living in a little village and working with the locals, and we were looking to bring their agricultural systems and practices into the 21st century.
Amazing.
It was amazing. And so I was 21 years old, second in charge of a 20 million pound project in Central Asia.
Wow.
I had to learn how to speak Russian and Uzbek on the ground.
And you did?
I did. My Russian and Uzbek isn't that great, but I can get by.
Yeah.
And I was looking for an adventure, and I got one and learnt a lot about myself. I had a lot of time to kind of think as well. And then came back to Australia. I was 24 years old. It was time to kind of grow up, get a job and get on with life. And I was interviewing in corporate Australia. I was getting extraordinary interviews with all the top of the agribusiness world in Australia. When they saw my CV, it was outstanding for a 24-year-old. But I was starting to look at that corporate world and what it entailed and the all of its elements. And I actually found it very unattractive.
From the get-go?
From the get-go. Mm-hmm. I was getting the CEOs of these agribusiness, the banks and the big companies. And I was looking at them, they were saying, come and work for us. And I was looking at them thinking, so if I work really, really hard and get to the top of my game, I end up looking like you. And I couldn't reconcile it.
Yeah.
So I was in this conundrum, I thought that's what I had to do, and I'd studied and that topic. And anyway, the stress and tension in around all of that, and I wasn't managing that very well. I was managing that with alcohol and recreational drugs. And it just wasn't, cutting the mustard. And I got temporary relief that way, but it wasn't giving me a sustained relief. Mm-hmm. And eventually, an aunt of mine bailed me up at a family function, and she looked me dead in the eye. And she said, she's a very intuitive woman. She looked at me and she said, how are you settling in back into the, life and family and the Western world after living out in a Muslim village for 3 years? And I looked at her and I said, I'm really finding it really challenging. And she said, I think you would benefit enormously, to learn to meditate. And I think I had a beer in each hand. And I think I almost dropped both of them. This was not on my radar and so far from where I was. And I kind of laughed at her. I kind of almost scoffed at her. I think back a little ashamed of my behavior. It wasn't aggressive or anything, but I just I went, what? And anyway, the conversation moved on. And about 6 weeks later, I continued to run the model that I was running, and it wasn't working. And I remembered the conversation. I picked up the phone and I said, I need help. And she said, I'll put you in contact with a guy called Tom Knowles. And Tom was based up here in Jersey Road in Wallara. He was a trained neuroscientist that had given up a career in neuroscience, a very lucrative career in neuroscience, to teach meditation 35 years prior to me meeting him. And I went and sat with him, and I spent an hour with him, and we talked about stress and tension and the fatigue and the impact of that. And then we migrated on to kind of quantum field physics and unified field theorem, and we talked about spirituality and a whole range of topics.
So you were already quite conversed in those topics, like they were already going around.
Yeah, I was kind of starting to think about all those things, and Tom also was able to speak about those things so eloquently. And after an hour with him, he said, Tim, you seem like a pretty intelligent young fella. He said, I can see you're not having much fun at the moment, but we could talk and talk and talk about this, but what's going to make a really big and sustained difference is you learning to meditate. So he said, why don't you, go away and have a think about what we've talked about today. And if you feel inclined and would like to learn to meditate with me, then let me know and we can make that happen. And I said, no need to wait, I'm in. And I said, when's the next possible and available time? He said, tomorrow at 10:30. And I said, great, I'm in. And he said, bring a handful of flowers, 2-3 pieces of fruit, and a white handkerchief, and I'll see you here at 10:30. And I thought, what on earth are we going to do with those? Anyway, I decided I was just going to do it. Yeah. And I turned up there the next day with my fruit, my flowers and handkerchief. He performed a little ceremony done in Sanskrit to acknowledge the line of teachers through which this knowledge has come over 5,000 years. It was a beautiful ceremony. I'll never forget his rendition of it that day. It's beautiful. And then he gave me my own personal mantra and began to instruct me in how to use that properly. And from that first day, it completely changed my life. I felt more relaxed and more at ease. I felt I had gained immediate perspective and clarity in my thinking. And from that day, there was a huge shift in my experience of my life.
What was it, you think, that shifted when you said from that very first moment you felt that was something different,
this little technique. And now I've kind of got in behind it, and I'm very interested in the science behind all of this, and I've done a lot of reading and research and understanding it around that. And what that little technique showed me how to do was turn off the adrenaline, noradrenaline, cortisol, all the flight-fight chemistry. I was running on flight-fight chemistry. And it turned that off, and it started to flood my brain and body with serotonin, dopamine, and oxytocin. And it relaxed my body, and it relaxed me mentally, physically, emotionally. And it opened up my mental, physical, and emotional repertoire. And as a result of that, I was able to, what I now refer to, a little term that I came up with a few years ago, what it allowed me to do was what I call, it allowed me to get back a few rows in the conscious cinema. So you know when you go to the movies and you get caught in the front row, it can be an Academy Award winning, best actor, best actress, best cinematographer, best costume, best sound, best everything. But if we're in the front row of that cinema, sitting in that front seat of the cinema and trying to watch that film is a nightmare. You know, it's overwhelming. The sound's overwhelming. We can't see the screen. We've got to keep, you know, adjusting our head in order to be able to see what's going on. It's a very uncomfortable experience. And the solution is not to leave the cinema. It's like, oh, this is too overwhelming and horrible. Let's just get out of here. That's not the solution, because if we do that, we miss out on this magnificent film and show. And the solution is not to leave the cinema. The solution is to work out how to get back a few rows in the cinema. And if we can get back a few rows in the cinema, then the screen drops back, the sound settles, you know, choc top in one hand and, you know, someone sitting next to you, or popcorn if you're that kind of a, you know, more on the savory side of things. And we can really lend ourselves mentally, physically and emotionally to this magnificent film and production while out being overwhelmed by it, sitting comfortably in the chair, you know, with our choc top or popcorn. And it changes everything. And that's really the best explanation that I can give. I suddenly felt like I wasn't in the front row of the conscious cinema anymore. I was back a few rows, and everything, the same experience, my same life, same body, same mind, same emotions, same family, same work challenges, but I just felt like I wasn't in the front row anymore. I was back a few rows. And it changed everything. It changed the way that I related to my own thinking, my own emotions, my own physical body, and everything else. Because ultimately there's only one thing going on in the universe, and that is relationship. The relationship between things. And all of a sudden, when I was able to get back, settle the mind and relax the body and turn off the flight-fight chemistry, turn on the stay and play. The opposite of flight and fight is stay and play, or rest and digest is the other term.
Yeah, that's what I...
Yeah, I like the stay and play.
Stay and play,
yeah,
I
stay
like
and play
that
is
too.
nice. And I just found myself in that state of consciousness. And it wasn't because I was trying to think this way or trying to think that way or, you know, counter my own thoughts. I just felt like there was space, mentally, physically, and emotionally. And that then rippled out to my mind, emotions, physical body, relationships with family, friends, you know, girlfriend at the time, work, everything. Everything was relationship, and it just felt like all of those relationships had more space in them. And I then went back into the corporate world. I moved out of agriculture. I decided that was not for me. I moved into event management and did some great things there. Brought Mikhail Gorbachev and General Schwarzkopf out here in 1999. Moved into brand strategy and development, all things that I would have never have had the confidence to do. And I was just stepping into the unknown comfortably and confidently.
I also really liked that example that you used with the cinema, right?
Yeah.
Because everybody can relate to it, because it's
Yeah.
like if you're so close to something, it's hard to keep up with things. While
Yeah.
if you can zoom out and like
That's it.
take a step back, you're like, okay, this is the situation. What can we do about it, or how can we best deal with it? You know.
That's right.
In
And you said use
context.
that term step back. That's a really interesting, you know, and what that is, another word for that is transcend. Transcend means move beyond or step back. That's what transcending means. And Vedic meditation is a transcending meditation technique. So there are many types of techniques. There's contemplative, where we think about some beautiful scene, you know, a valley with butterflies or a beach scene with beautiful, you know, things happening. That's contemplative. Contemplative, or, you know, contemplating. You know, there can be focus-based practices where someone really forces their mind onto something.
A lot of the guided meditations would be
Contemplative.
that as well, right?
Yeah, generally contemplative. There are some force and control stuff. Meditation is about transcending, which is moving beyond or stepping back consciously. But you can't do that intellectually. It's about practicing a technique that facilitates that process. And that's the beauty of the technique. We practice the technique gently, and I'll explain that more in due course. And the mind just moves beyond. being in the front row, and starts to move towards the back row of the conscious cinema. And the full transcending experience is where we move beyond thinking completely. Mind goes completely still. No thought, no mantra, nothing at all. But we're not unconscious. We're not asleep. We're conscious. We're aware and awake inside. There's just no content being produced inside of that experience. It's a contentless conscious state. Yeah. Consciousness without content. And we call that pure consciousness. Or another term we give it is bliss consciousness. Or another term we give it is being. Being. We're not doing anything. We are simply being. Consciousness without any content in it. And that's what we refer to as the transcendent state. We move beyond thinking itself. And that is what Vedic meditation delivers to a novice meditator. Within the first 1, 2, 3 sessions, a novice meditator will start to have little moments of that transcendence. And in the beginning they're momentary, but as someone continues to practice, those windows become more and more available and prolonged. And even more importantly than that is the ability to access that inner, quiet, still, non-changing aspect of our conscious state, that bliss conscious being or pure conscious state in the background of our awareness while we're engaged in dynamic activity.
Yeah.
That's the
a whole
ultimate
other
goal.
level, right?
That's the goal, right? And this is the thing. People think that meditation's about, when you're closing your eyes. The whole point of meditation is to access that inner stillness, to then bring that forward into your eyes open experience.
Yeah.
And the ultimate goal of meditation is to be able to enjoy what I refer to as stillness in the storm.
Yeah.
Stillness inside of dynamics. It's not about heading for the hills and rolling the rock in front of the door and leaving life behind.
Because that's kind of the easy solution, isn't it?
People think that's great. They think,
Yeah.
my life would be fixed, right? Yeah. That's not the ultimate experience.
Yeah.
Because anybody can roll the rock in front of the door, close their eyes and find inner stillness.
Exactly.
But someone taps them on the shoulder, experience is gone. And from our point of view, that's no real achievement. The ultimate achievement is to be able to enjoy an inner stillness while engaged in dynamic thought, speech, and action. And that's why I've got my meditation center in the most densely populated part of Sydney, here in these terrace houses, opposite a pub,
Paddington,
which is noisy Paddington, Paddington, New South Wales. High density living with a pub across the road.
Yep.
I'm not sitting in the Himalayas. I'm not sitting in the Blue Mountains. I'm not sitting at Byron Bay. We want to learn how to, the ultimate goal and what we refer to as householder technique of meditation is about enjoying stillness in the storm, stillness inside of dynamics. That's really something.
Yeah, I love this because you've mentioned a few really important points there, because I think when people think about meditation, and I used to be the same, right? When you think about meditation, you do think about, closing your eyes, meditating, not being able to think, not being allowed to have any thoughts. And if you don't feel like you're doing that, you feel like you're not doing it right, and you're failing to a degree, right? So what you are talking about and what we're going to go more into, I think I really love that concept, because it's also, talking about fight and flight and all of that. I think most people probably live in that state a lot of their waking hours, these days. Everybody's busy, everybody's like constantly on the go. So having something that you can really practice in each of those moments. And it is one of those things, like you said with meditation, it's so interesting when you're talking about, sitting somewhere in the Himalayas in a cave and meditating. I mean, that's awesome. And that sounds easy to me because you're there and you have that stillness. But meditation is one of those things that seems to get harder, like from personal experience as well. The busier and I am, and the more things are going on in my life, the more challenging I'm finding it to actually sit down and find that peace and quiet.
Yes.
So that's why when you're talking about, bringing that into your daily life, into those moments of, the stillness in the storm phrase, I really love that because that's really what we need, right?
Yeah, and I think when we understand what it is that we're ultimately trying to achieve, if we're trying to achieve, being away from the world and away from all dynamics and we're not achieving that, then we get stressed and feel like we've failed. But when we understand the goal of what we're actually trying to achieve through meditation is stillness inside of dynamics. It is commonly referred to, we see in elite performance of any description, be it on the sporting field or business or in the arts or parenting or whatever, whatever it happens to be, the people that are operating at their peak, will experience what we often refer to as being in the zone or the flow state. You hear these states. Now, these are all different labels for the same neurophysiological experience, which is inner stillness. If you were to sit down and debrief anyone that's operating at a peak level, no matter what they're doing, then they will report subjectively that they're enjoying an inner quiet, still state, an inner still, non-changing aspect of their conscious state while enjoying and engaged in dynamic activity, a dynamic, fruitful, exact behavior. And, this is what is referred to as being in the zone or
being in flow.
Being in flow. This is exactly what we're looking to achieve. In fact, that is the working definition. Another term to give to that is yoga. People think yoga is bending and stretching the body. It's not. Yoga is a neurophysiological state, a fully integrated state between mind, body, emotions, and essential nature. That's what yoga is. Now, yogic practices, which is what these techniques, asana, what we call yoga in the West, yoga asana. Asana is where we get our word architecture from. So physical architecture is what asana is. We can come through the physical body through asana. We can come through the breath. We call pranayam. Pranayam is the breathing techniques that will facilitate integration of mind, body, emotions, and essential nature. And then meditation is about coming through the mind and to facilitate that integrated state through the mind. Now, these are all connected, and in fact, the ultimate yogic practice is to practice asana, coming through the body, through the breath, pranayam, and through the mind, meditation. But the most subtle and the most powerful of the yogic techniques is meditation. And to be more specific, a transcending meditation technique. All techniques have value and benefit and purpose, but to facilitate the state of yoga, a transcending technique is necessary. And so that's what I do, is I teach people meditation, Vedic meditation as a primary yogic practice, and then I teach them the pranayam, and we then add that on. And then if someone is interested and they want to accelerate and develop their experience, then we add asana, yoga asana. Some people come to me that have done a lot of yoga asana, and then, we might teach them the pranayam
to go the
other way.
Yeah.
So it just depends. But it's all about bringing the mind into that state of integration. I was watching a TED Talk the other day, one of the world's leading neuroscientists. He was saying someone living in a city in 2022 is being exposed to the same levels of stimulation input into their brain in one day that someone 200 years ago would have been exposed to in their whole lifetime.
Yeah, I have seen it as well.
Yeah.
That's insane, isn't it?
Isn't it incredible?
Yeah.
So 200 years is, it's a bit of time, but in the scheme of human brain and nervous system development, these human brains and nervous systems, as they are, have been around for about 250,000 years.
Yeah, it's really only our great-grandparents that we would be talking about, kind of.
Blink of an eye
Maybe a
ago.
little bit more, yeah.
And, you and I have both seen the world change in extraordinary ways. When I went traveling to Uzbekistan in 1996, none of us had a mobile phone, no one had an email address, the internet did not exist, or certainly wasn't available to the general population. That's 25 years ago.
Yeah.
This is blink of an eye. What has happened in the last 25 years has been a massive quantum shift.
It's been huge, yeah. I remember getting our first computer at home. I think I was 17, and it was the dial-up internet,
Yes,
and it was the most amazing thing. But my parents used to get grumpy at me when I was on the internet for too long, because somebody could call, because you were on the same line as the phone line.
Yes.
Yeah, and to think that was only 20 years ago.
25 years ago.
It's crazy.
It's incredible.
What has happened since then. Now we've got everything with us all the time, like your phone is kind of like your third hand. We
can project our voice, and we can even now project our image, which has only really just happened a minute ago. Can you imagine what COVID would have been like if we didn't have Zoom or FaceTime or mobile phones? And now that there's a real possibility 25 years ago.
Would have been a different story.
Totally different experience. The isolation, Now, there's some wonderful aspects of this, and then there's some challenges. And we're still working out how to relate to all of this technology.
Yeah.
But my point being that things have escalated in such a short period of time. And what we're seeing as a result of that, the third law of thermodynamics says as you de-excite any system, it will move towards a state of order. The opposite is also true, which is as you stimulate any system, it will naturally move towards a state of disorder and chaos. And we are seeing, so the qualities of an orderly conscious state, as stated by neuroscience, are alacrity, meaning clarity, perspective and vision, creativity, energy, joyfulness, intelligence, and prints out as physical well-being. That's the printout of an orderly conscious state. You start stimulating any system, human system, animal system, any system. As you start to stimulate and overstimulate that system, it will move towards a state of disorder and chaos. And the qualities of a disorderly and chaotic conscious state print out as a lack of clarity. So the conscious fog sets in. We lose creativity, we lose energy, lethargy, lose joyfulness, lose intelligence, and it starts to print out in a lack of physical ease that, if it goes unchecked and unaddressed, will migrate and graduate into dis-ease, disease, mental, physical, emotional. And we are seeing this happen at inordinate levels.
And is it right to assume that, if you're going into those levels of distress, it's kind of like a domino effect? The more you go there, the more things start happening to you when you don't try to bring it back?
100%. Because the world is to us as we are to the world. And as we take that conscious state to the world, and then we start, what we do is we take that to the world and we start creating that disorderliness and chaos around us. Therefore the world verifies and validates our chaos, and therefore we get caught up in it and we go around and it starts to build, and we actually start creating that, and it becomes our reality. The opposite is also true.
And then you hear the everything happens to me, shit just keeps going wrong kind of thing.
That's right.
Yeah.
And the way I talk about it is, it's a bit like you go to lunch, you end up with coriander or spinach in your teeth, and if you stand there and try and fix that in the mirror, I can see the image over there has got spinach in its teeth. Now I go out there and try and fix it. It will not do what it's told. The moment I realize that that is in fact a reflection of me, and I see the reflection over there, but I take my finger and I put it in my teeth back here, and I adjust it here, and the spinach then moves in my teeth, and the spinach in the image in the mirror also moves and changes. And this is the way the world works, and this is what most people don't really understand how to do.
It's the principle of you can only change yourself, right? You can't
be the change
anyone else
you want to see in the world. We see the need for change in the world outside of us, in our relationships, in our children, in our work, in our society, in the world in general. And we look to the world, and the mistake that people make is they go and try and fix it outside of themselves. In fact, what that is it's information for us to ask the question, what is it that I see outside of me? What's that asking me to look at within myself?
What is it showing me? What is it trying to teach me?
That's exactly right. It's the teacher. The world is to us as we are to the world. The world is a mirror. And the moment that we realize that, we stop becoming finger pointers, which is, it's him, my husband or my wife, or, my children or my boss, or this or the Ukrainians. And, there's some subtleties to that. But instead of doing that, which is so disempowering and actually really brings about no result, we suddenly realize, we start asking, what's this telling me about me? What's this asking of me? What's this trying to teach me? That's the difference between someone that is conscious and someone that is less conscious. Not unconscious. Everyone is conscious. Everything is conscious, but less conscious. The conscious are self-referral. They ask that question about themselves. The less conscious blame and finger point at others. And we've all heard that saying, when you point your finger at someone, there's 3 fingers pointing back.
Yeah, I love that.
It's so good, isn't it?
It is so good.
And it's just that little reminder.
Totally.
Lovely. It's like that. It's telling me, that's there for me to tell me something about myself. Now, when we then approach it like that, and then we've got the conscious state to adjust our behavior, then we come to the world and then we address the issues. But we do this first, then we do that. And this is what this whole teaching is about adjusting our conscious state, getting back a few rows in the conscious cinema, gain some space so that we can see our own thinking, see our own emotions, see our own physicality. And then we can decide whether to attend to a thought or not, to engage with an emotion or not. When we're in the front row of the conscious cinema, we don't have that opportunity. We are our thought, we are our emotion. There's no opportunity to be discerning about whether to attend or to not, or to attend to a degree or not to a thought or an emotion or an outside stimulus. We are governed by our thoughts. We want to develop a conscious state that is the governor of our thoughts and our emotions and our physicality, not governed by those things. And to do that, we have to learn how to transcend, move beyond, get to the back row of the conscious cinema. And the ultimate goal, we don't want to be in the front row of the cinema, no good. We don't want to be in the back row of the conscious cinema all the time, although that is what we do when we transcend.
It's like you're too far removed.
That's right, then we're disconnected.
Yeah.
What we want to do is to be able to sit right in that sweet spot in the middle. And it's just like going to the movies. We don't want to be in the front row, we don't want to be in the back row. There's those great seats right in the middle. And this is what we refer to as the Goldilocks phenomenon. Not too hot, not too cold, just right. And this is a universal and scientific phenomenon that's often reported in astrophysics and astronomy and in all kinds of things, in everything. The ultimate goal of life is the sweet spot. We want to be in the sweet spot more and more and more of the time till we're in it all of the time. The goal is to be able to have that experience all of the time. And that's what these magnificent 40 billion neuron brains of ours are designed to experience.
So not just when you are then meditating, even, in the storm, it's like literally trying to be there on a constant basis.
That's right. It's there all of the time.
And you can tap into it more or less as you're going along? Or how does that?
A novice meditator will meditate, and the maximum advised practice with Vedic meditation is 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes in the afternoon, evening. So when I teach people to meditate, I would say to them, if you're someone that likes exercising first thing, you might get up, go for your walk or your run or your swim or take the dog around the block and then come back and then meditate and then have some breakfast. Something like that. And this can all be very flexible, but something like that.
So you don't have to do it first thing in the morning?
No, not necessarily. It's better, if we can go earlier in the day before the whole world wakes up and, the emails and phone calls start rolling in. But, I know parents that have got little kids, and we move one muscle in the house and the whole house is awake. Yeah?
Yes.
You know that?
They're usually awake before you. That's the problem.
There you go. So, for parents like that, what I would say is get up and do the kids and get them into the world and get them off to kindy or settled down or whatever, and then meditate then. Great. That works for your lifestyle. Great. Do that. But as early into the day as we can.
Yeah.
Then we launch into our day, and then any time, I suggest, and again for parents and also business people, I really recommend around that 2-3 o'clock mark. It's where we classically fall off the energetic cliff.
Yep.
There's a circadian rhythm shift there.
After lunch, right?
After lunch, everyone, falls off that energetic cliff, and it's where people go for caffeine and sugar. And so instead of doing that, sit, meditate, hit the pressure valve, fill the tank up again. 20 minutes meditation is equivalent to 3 to 4 hours sleep.
I have seen it. I must have seen it on your website,
yes,
probably.
Yes, you would have done, yeah.
But I saw that, and that was amazing to me. I was like, maybe that's how I can catch up on all the sleep that I'm not getting.
Yeah, and we actually don't need sleep. We need rest.
Yeah.
And one method of rest is sleep. But if we're putting all the weight on sleep to deliver us the rest and relaxation that we need to defrag the brain, detox the body, and which is what happens during our sleep. If we're putting all that weight on sleep, and we're seeing this is where sleep disturbance comes. And I would say over the last 21 years of teaching 6,000 people to meditate, I would say 55 to 60% of people that have come to learn to meditate have come because they've got some kind of sleep disorder.
Interesting.
They either can't get to sleep, or they're getting to sleep and then waking up at 2, 3, 4 in the morning, mind racing, can't get back to sleep. They either are not getting enough sleep or they need too much sleep, or it's interrupted because of something. And so meditation, what happens is someone's meditating twice a day for 20 minutes, morning and then afternoon, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in that window before dinner, mid-afternoon, early afternoon to before dinner, they would meditate for the second time. If someone was meditating twice a day for 20 minutes, they're getting an additional, let's be conservative, 6 hours sleep equivalent into their brain and body every day before they lie down at night.
Yeah, yeah.
So what happens is the whole brain and body's done the defrag on the hard drive. So when they go to sleep, the brain and body doesn't need to do the night shift.
Yeah.
Therefore we start sleeping properly. Yeah. Therefore we need less sleep. Therefore we find ourselves waking up earlier in the morning, fresher and energized. Therefore we feel like exercising. We've got time to meditate and eat well. And they are the 3 pillars to well-being: meditation, exercise, functional movement, and good nutrition. I know when I get tired, I don't feel like exercising, and I eat garbage.
Yeah.
And then I get inflamed, and then I don't feel like exercising, and then I eat garbage, and then I go around that cycle.
It's like the hamster wheel, isn't it? Yeah.
And so while the big collective conversations have been, we've all got to exercise and we've all got to eat well, my personal opinion is rest and relaxation is the number one, because that feeds into the others. And that's the next big conversation we have to have. And that's where meditation becomes the life skill that is becoming non-negotiable. We need to meditate. In this day and age, things have accelerated so quickly. The demands and stimulation is moving us towards states of conscious disorder and lack of ease, graduating to dis-ease. What are the options? We either pull out of life and head for the hills to roll the rock in front of the door, or we work out how to get more rest and relaxation in a very short period of time. And that's what Vedic meditation does beautifully. And you can do it, as you said, on the bus, on the train, on the plane, on the park bench. In the car is a great place to meditate. I know lots of people meditate in their cars during COVID. They'd walk out of their house, go and sit in the car to get away from the family, sit, meditate in the car, and then come back to the house. I know business people that will just walk out to their car in the middle of the day, 2 o'clock, sit, meditate for 20 minutes, walk back into the office. Yeah. We can do this anywhere. You don't have to sit in funny pretzel positions. You don't have to, make funny noises. Vedic meditation is about practicing a very simple technique mentally inside, using a bija mantra, very specific style of mantra. And these mantras have no meaning to them, but they are sounds that are intrinsically charming to the mind. Yeah. And why that's valuable is the mind naturally wants to move towards greater charm. We know that's true because if your favorite piece of music started playing next door now, you would be very respectfully, looking at me and nodding, you'd be listening to the music. It's just what the mind does, right? That's right. And so if we can introduce a sound that has no meaning but is intrinsically charming, the mind is going to willingly engage with that sound. Because it doesn't mean anything, the mind engages with that sound, and that sound will automatically refine. As it refines, it becomes more subtle, therefore more charming. Therefore the mind engages and that mantra will refine or slip, and it'll go deeper. And then the mind becomes more engaged. It slips and it goes deeper again and deeper into those quieter, stiller, right into the state of moving beyond thinking completely and transcending, experiencing that pure conscious, bliss conscious and being state. And the key to that is the correct mantra passed on correctly with correct instruction. Just like riding a bike. When we all learn to ride a bike, we needed to be fitted for the right size bike. We needed someone to hold the back of the bike while we got our balance and then give us some good instruction. And if we got those 3 things, then it took a little bit of doing.
It's practicing, right?
But then we learned, right? And soon enough we're riding the bike and practice and we got better. And in the beginning we were a bit wobbly, but soon we were jumping gutters and, and having a great time. Meditation's exactly the same. We need correct mantra passed on correctly with correct instruction.
So that's Vedic meditation.
That's Vedic meditation.
You're getting a mantra from your teacher.
That's right.
Is the teacher specifically looking at you and assessing you and then giving you a mantra?
Exactly right.
Based on that?
Yeah. So there's a base set of about 18 mantras, and then there's an elaboration of those. There's about 7 elaborations of those. And based on your age, sits inside of what we call stage of life from the Ayurvedic perspective. So there are very well-known stages of life. So depending on your stage of life, and then what we call your mind-body type, which prints out in eye color, hair color, facial shape, body shape, personality, prints out in what we call mind-body type, or dosha, from the Ayurvedic perspective.
Yeah.
You may have heard of Pitta, Vata,
Yeah.
Kapha, yes. So all of this is taken into consideration, and then someone gets fitted for a mantra. And the way I talk about it, it's like you go to the shoe shop, and they've got that little metal machine. And they, and they go like that on the width of your foot, and like that on the length of your foot. And then you get fitted, and then what they do is they go out the back and they get the right shoe style, the right shape. It's all of those things, but it still has a standard element to it. Mm-hmm. And then what happens is you put your foot into that shoe and you start walking around in it, and immediately it starts molding to the contours of your very particular foot. So this is the way that the Vedic meditation mantras work, is that there's this base set, you are fitted for the mantra based on the criteria I mentioned, and then it's about practicing that personalizes that mantra and experience.
I love that because it's very individualized, right? Yeah. It's not just one size fits all and you're going in somewhere and everyone says the same thing or everyone does the same thing. It's really, of course, there's that base there, but then it's about, who are you? What stage in your life are you in? What are you going through? What are your kind of circumstances? And based on that, you're getting what's appropriate for you at that time.
Exactly. It's a much more, it's kind of tailored rather than off the shelf.
And then does it change as you are, like let's say you're starting, you're meditating for years, you obviously get older, your life circumstances change. Does the mantra change along the way with you?
Oh, look, amazing stories. Like I've taught people that learned to meditate when they were 5 years old, 50 years ago or 40 years ago. And, they've had that mantra for 40 years and they still love their practice. And then they'll come and see me and they'll say, I learned to meditate, I'm 45, I learned when I was 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or whatever. And I love my practice, but, what can I do next? And I say, well, I can take you to your next level. And so what we do is we do the little ceremony again, beautiful ceremony done in Sanskrit. And then I provide them with the next level of mantra for them.
Okay.
So someone can do that every 12 to 18 months if they want.
So it depends on the person how quickly they outgrow that
It's
mantra.
Absolutely up to them.
Yeah.
And someone can come every 12 to 18 months and get their next step. Or someone can have that mantra for the rest of their life and they'll happily meditate. But if someone wants to develop their practice and be proactive, then they can do that.
It always reminds me of the stages of consciousness as well. When you're looking at the stages of consciousness and how you're going through them during different stages in your life and like ages of your life. And then some people obviously kind of keep going. Some people are happy where they are and they don't actually want to move. So it kind of reminds me of that. You are able to choose yourself again.
It is
right for you.
It is the great blessing of being a human is we have earned this incredible experience of free will, is that we can choose the pace. The reality is everything is evolving, everything is expanding, everything is becoming more conscious. The amazing thing about human beings is we get to choose. We can accelerate that process or decelerate it or hold it. We can do it. It's like being in a car. We can accelerate, we can hold our current speed, we can decelerate our speed, or we can accelerate our speed. That is the unique thing about being human. The animal kingdom is governed by nature. The human, we get to choose. Now, we're still going, it's like being on a highway. We're still going. And we're going to end up, but we get to accelerate, hold or decelerate.
But it's interesting because we go along as a collective, obviously, and we might think we don't have that much choice of where we're going as a collective, but how we are acting and what we're doing for us as an individual does emanate out into the field, and does work towards how the collective is going.
The ripple effect.
Yeah, it's the ripple effect.
You're onto a really beautiful thing, and I think in particular it's a beautiful idea right at this time when we're faced with an election in this country. The question is, because we all look and go, what can we do and how can we make an impact? And the wonderful thing about being in this country is, we have compulsory voting, so we have to walk into that room and whatever we do on that piece of paper is our business. But the question ultimately, I think we all ask as human beings and people that care, and whether you're a parent or not a parent, but people that care, is how can we make this experience better? And the answer to that is be the change you want to see in the world.
Yep.
Be it. Be a shining example of what's possible. And when you really do some rigorous thinking, and I've done this, what can we do to the world? How can we make a contribution? What's the biggest thing we can do? We cannot control anybody or anything into changing, evolving, or doing anything. Fear-based administration, fear-based motivation will not achieve anything sustainably. But inspiration-based leadership, inspiration-based motivation, and showing people what's possible by being it. And I've worked with a lot of people, and I say to them, the darker your dark, the lighter your light, the better. Even, when we think of ourselves, the dark moments and some of the things that we're very not proud of and the way that we've behaved to ourselves and to other people, good. Because out of that, if we can shift and change and move our conscious state to become lighter, then the move from dark to light consciously is a wonderful experience for us.
Yep.
But it also inevitably inspires others that look at us, and maybe they've seen us in dark moments and thought, oh, that person's no good, or that person's not capable, and they see us change and evolve out of that, and they look at that and they say, if that person can do it, then maybe so can I. And if we do that for one person in our lives, we've done more to change the world than most people will do in their whole lifetime.
And I mean, it's also a projection, right? When somebody looks at somebody going like, they are no good, because at the end of the day, you can only see something in another person that you somehow have in yourself as well.
The world is to us as we are to the world.
Yeah,
it's a reflection.
exactly.
But the question that we all ask is, what can I do to change the world? And the answer to it is this: quantum field physics and unified field theorem is proving that there is one whole, indivisible, conscious field expressing itself in infinite diversity while maintaining its unified nature at all times. There is only one thing. There aren't two things in the whole universe. And the way that I think about it is this: if you were to take that tiny little bit of skin on the cuticle of my right pinky finger, if you were to get that with a pair of tweezers and you were to pull it, then what would happen is my whole body would come with it. Even that little toe down there, as far away from my little finger, it's got to come with it because it's connected. So the point being, if you can influence that little bit of skin, then you influence the whole thing. And this is the reality of it. We look at ourselves and I think, I'm just this little, piece of local, localized little piece of meat and sinew and, blood and what can I do?
Well, you hear that a lot. People say, well, I'm not going to be able to change that, or I'm not going to be able to, make a difference in that.
That's right. And that's actually not correct.
Yeah.
Because when we understand that everything is connected, then we realize that in shifting ourselves, in elevating and expanding and opening our conscious state, we influence everything. Just like you influence that tiny little bit of skin, you influence the whole body. There's only one thing. There aren't two things in the universe. Particulate theorem is completely falling apart. There aren't two things in the universe. There is only one thing expressing itself in infinite diversity. You, me, that pen you've got in your hand, this shawl I've got on, that carpet over there. One whole, indivisible, can't be divided, conscious thing. What's it doing? Expressing itself in infinite diversity while maintaining its unified nature at all times. It's just one thing. So this is so exciting because we suddenly realize I don't have to fix and solve the world's problems. What I've got to do is shift me. And when I shift me, and what does that shifting require? Settling the mind, relaxing the body, turning off the flight-fight chemistry, turning on the serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, the stay and play biochemistry. What does that do? It opens up our mental, physical, and emotional repertoire, gets us out of flight and fight and into stay and play. Then our whole brain functioning and emotional functioning starts changing. And as we shift that, what happens is we start to be able to relate to ourselves more artfully. We feel more relaxed and ease within our own skin. What do? We take that to our partners and to our children and to our work environment and to the barista making us coffee in the morning. And what do? We're more relaxed and at ease. We're more content, fulfilled. We've still got stuff to do, but we're not in that flight-fight mode.
And it's interesting as well when you are in that state, right? And when you are then out in the world and you're starting to witness how the world's reacting to you.
Yeah.
Like it's, your children suddenly are calmer or are happier or whatever it is, the people on the street smile back at you or smile at you or are friendly, and it's like those things that are kind of rippling again through your whole life, no matter if it's home or work or just walking down the street meeting somebody. It's something that you can really kind of tangibly see.
Tangible. And, when we're relaxed, the world's like that to us.
Yeah.
I love that Crowded House song, take the weather with you. We take the weather. If we're if we're taking bad weather, then where's this bad weather? Mood everywhere is bad.
Yeah.
Inclement, mood. When we're sunny and relaxed and happy, then the world is like that.
Yeah.
And the sooner we understand this, the better.
What if it's not? What if you find yourself in a situation, because I actually found myself in a situation that recently, where I had a few interactions with people that were quite challenging and confronting, but I was doing what we were talking about before. I was looking at myself going how did I invite this into my life? And I actually couldn't figure out how. But there was just a few things where people were really quite rude and quite, not very nice. And I'm like, it's really interesting, how did that happen? But it must have been something unconsciously maybe that I've been doing. I don't know.
The next step is when we develop that conscious state and it becomes stable. And then we take it to the world. And the world's going to come at us. And the more stable we are, the more challenged we're going to become. And it's a gift, because what happens is the needs of others come and find us. And so when we're relaxed and at ease and more content and happy and like that, we've still got our daily experience. We're not off with the fairies.
Yeah.
But the needs of the world come and get us. And we are supply and the world is demand. And so those in need come and seek us out. And if they need to touch and connect and feel someone that's connected and happy and relaxed, in their conscious state, they've forgotten that state. They don't know how to access it. They even think it's impossible. And so these people will come. We will draw these people towards us to give them an experience.
But is that the interruption then? Are they trying to interrupt your state that's actually quite okay?
They've come to challenge us to see how stable our conscious state is.
Yeah.
Because the goal is to have it all of the time.
That's so funny, because I said that to my husband, because one of the things was with one of our neighbors, who was a really challenging character. And I said exactly that to my husband. I was like, I'm like really trying to be, kind and, positive in the world, and trying to, what is the saying? Being what you're preaching, walking your talk.
Practice what you preach.
Practice what you preach, and kind of walking the talk, right? But I was like, but Farad, he really challenges me. I'm like, he really challenges me.
Beautiful.
And I saw it as that. I saw it as like it's a really good exercise to kind of practice that even more. But I was like, whoa. And then he actually, funnily enough, nothing actually had happened yet, and I just said it. And then it was on that day that he came up to us and started talking to us about something and being all kind of rude and weird about it. And I was like, it's like I invited that in, It's like, bring it on, bring me that challenge, Yeah,
this is, and what it does is it does two things. One, it gives them an exhibition of an experience that someone's having that conscious state, and it's mind-blowing to them. Because they think, if that was me, I'd be yelling and screaming, and this person's being relaxed and at ease and happy. And it's an opportunity for us to exhibit that to the world. And the other part is also it gives us, and this is what the truly conscious, they enjoy this, they welcome it.
Yeah.
Because what it does is it reveals to us where we're up to in our conscious development. And the correct assessment of that will always be the same, which is, I see this gift has revealed to me that I've progressed, and there is work to be done. So progress has been made and work to be done. And the joy of that for the conscious is so wonderful. I've made some progress and there's work to be done. What else can I do? And this is so exciting. It's not getting to a static endpoint.
Because the work never stops.
It never stops.
Right?
And it becomes, instead of that becoming a burden, it's a playground. An absolute playground. This is the joy of the conscious.
You see it as an opportunity rather than as a challenge, right?
And we're not trying to think that way, we just feel that way.
Yeah.
And when we've got something inside of our awareness that is still, in the background of our awareness that is still and stable and secure and non-changing, there are these human desires that every human has, whether they've thought about it or not. We desire stability, security, non-change, contentment, happiness, fulfillment, and freedom. They are things that every human desires, and they're fundamental desires that must be satiated. And what we have done as a species for a couple of thousand years is we have attempted to satiate or satisfy those desires through the acquisition of things outside of us, material, physical, acquiring a roof over our heads and, money, and acquiring relationships and acquiring the acquisition of stuff. And the idea is when I've got enough stuff or the right quality of stuff, there'll be this moment where I'll feel stable, secure, happy, content, etc., and free. And
Never happens,
I'll tell
does
you
it?
right here, right now, that time will never come.
Yeah.
And this is what Mother Nature is trying to teach us right now. We won't go too heavily into this, but the last few years have been nature's way.
Yeah.
Mother Nature speaks to us. And what does nature want for everything? It wants everything to evolve, expand, develop, but fundamentally evolve, progress. That's what it wants. And Mother Nature will speak to us. She'll whisper in our ear, and if we ignore that, she'll tap us on the shoulder. And if we ignore that, she'll poke us in the chest. And if we ignore that, she'll slap us across the face, right up to what I call the cosmic kick up the Khyber.
Which is what we got, right?
And this is what has been happening. Every single day on this planet, I was watching the world population clock. It's worth watching. It's mind-blowing. Google it. It is mind-blowing. At the end of today, from 12:01 this morning to 11:59 here in Australian time, at the end of today, there will be, worldwide, there will be 200,000 additional humans on this planet. Net.
On a daily
Net.
basis.
Every single day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. At the end of this week, there will be net, births minus deaths, 1.4 million more humans on this planet at the end of today. At the end of the year, in a pandemic year last year, there were 80 million additional human beings on the planet from the 1st of January to the 31st of December. 80 million in a pandemic year. It took 250,000 years for us to get to 1 billion humans at 1900. We were 3 billion at 1960, and 60 years later we're at 7.9 billion and growing by 80 million per annum, including in pandemic years. So if humanity continues to run this model of gaining their stability, security, contentment, happiness, fulfillment and freedom through relative acquisition, we're in trouble.
It almost sounds like Sydney house prices, right?
That's right. Exactly. Right?
Yeah, it's
Now,
just
what drives that?
exponentially growing. Yeah.
What's the driver behind that? The desire for stability, security, and safety and freedom. And people are trying to acquire their way. If it all goes south again, I'll have my little castle.
Yeah.
And people are spending money they don't have to create security. And there's nothing wrong with having a nice house. It's wonderful to have a nice house. It will not bring you security of any description. If you feel secure within yourself, you'll feel secure in any house.
Yeah.
If you're feeling insecure, you can have a mansion with Dobermans roaming the halls and the best security system, and you'll still feel scared and unsafe in it.
And that's what happens a lot, right? The more that people have, the less they're actually calm and,
That's
happy
it.
within themselves, because they do think that all this stuff is going to make them happy at some point, but there is just no ending
There's
to
no
that.
end to it. And this is actually a beautiful thing, Sylvia, because what it is, this is the spiritual pursuit, because we are given the opportunity. What we are all here doing and given permission to do is to do the life research we need to do to get to the point to ask the question that we need to ask. And there's a built-in mechanism in the universe that says when the student is ready, the knowledge will arrive. It'll find a conduit. And it might be in a song. It might be in a book that they're reading. It might be in a podcast that they listen to. It might be through a teacher. It might be through nature. But when the student is ready, but we've got to do the research we need to do to get to the point to ask the question. And when we ask that question at the level of inquiry, then the teacher will arrive somehow or other.
When you're saying ask the question, what do you mean exactly?
Whatever question it is that we're applying ourselves in the world and we're getting feedback about the conscious state we're bringing to the world and how artful it is at relating to life in general. And that will drive us into questioning. Why do I keep having this experience? Why does this keep happening? Why do people, why does this happen? And it's designed to drive us into questioning. And when the student is ready and starts asking those questions genuinely and deeply, there is a built-in mechanism in the universe, which is nature will provide the answer. And it can come through any kind of medium, a song, a book, a poem, a conversation with somebody, nature actually, looking around. There's all kinds of ways. It might be a physical teacher, but it doesn't need to be. It can be all different kinds of ways. And so what are we all doing? We're all doing the research we need to do with the current conscious state that we have to get to the point to ask the questions we need to ask. That's what life's all about.
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually had this conversation with my last podcast guest as well. And I said, for me, it's all about people starting to ask the question, people starting to be more inquisitive and questioning things generally, and not just taking everything that is as it is, but asking, is this still right for me? Does this still work for me? Do things still seem right? Because just because you have believed something for the past 40 years of your life doesn't mean that you have to believe the same thing for the next 40 years your life, And what you also said with, it will come to you when you're ready. I think the other important point for me in there is that it might be something that you've heard like 10 times before, but it just didn't resonate with you. But then there's this one time and your friend says something, or like you said, you hear it on the radio or you read it on a billboard, and suddenly you go like, oh my God, yes. And you're aware of the fact that you've heard it before, like 20 times, but it lands. Yeah. And it doesn't just land, it actually puts you into action,
That's it. And so where does meditation come into this? Because when we're enmeshed when we're in the front row of the conscious cinema, our ability to hear, see, be discerning is virtually impossible. And so what we will tend to do in that state is we will continue to do the same thing the way that we've done it. Everyone's heard that saying, doing the same thing the same way and expecting a different result is the working definition of insanity.
Yep.
And so what have we got to change? We've got to change where I am in the conscious cinema. Because when we're back a few rows in the conscious cinema, what we start to find is that we are able to hear. And what our ability therefore to do is to turn that into action. Now, when someone's up in the front row of the conscious cinema, what will come out of that is discomfort that may graduate into dis-ease, which can be and facilitate suffering. And we can go right into suffering to get to the point where we are rendered choiceless about listening and hearing. But there's enormous collateral damage and time in that.
But that's a lot of the time how things happen.
That's a lot of the time how things happen. It's often the way that people will wake up.
Yeah, exactly.
Now that is one way. Or if we are able to learn how to transcend and get back a few rows in the conscious cinema, then we can see things more clearly. We can hear them. Things land. We can be in that conscious state where that happens all of the time, rather than us getting stuck in thought, speech, and behavioral patterns that lead to dis-ease and even suffering at enormous levels, before we get to ask the questions, because we're so enmeshed that we can't hear, we can't see. And so this is what happens. And often, as you say, the storyline can be someone can suffer and suffer and suffer. It can get so bad, then they ask the question. Inevitably, that will lead them to transcending one way or the other. And then they'll start to be able to listen and hear and see. But unless they do something about, on a daily basis, cultivating that, getting back a few rows in the conscious cinema, they'll end up back in the front row of the conscious cinema again. So this is what people have observed over 5,000 years. In India, they've observed the need to transcend. And that's what Vedic meditation does beautifully. It gets us back a few rows in the conscious cinema. We can see, we can hear, we can see the patterns, we can see the effect, the cause and effect of our thought, speech, and behavior. Then we're able to, identify whether that's uplifting and elevating to us and others or not. And we can adjust our behavior. If we're in the front row of the conscious cinema, we've got no way of doing that. It's not possible. You can talk and talk and talk about it till you're blue in the face. It makes no difference. And that's what I love about Vedic meditation is it's not about talking about it. It's about practicing a technique that settles the mind, relaxes the body, turns off the flight fight, turns on the stay and play. It opens up the conscious experience, gets us back a few rows in the conscious cinema, and then we just experience the world that way. It's not a philosophy, it's a technique. And that's what I love about it. And it's very practical, it's very pragmatic, and people practice the technique and it just works. And I've seen so many people benefit so enormously from meditation.
Yeah, and in terms of the benefits, what are some of the most transformative transformations that you have witnessed, over all those years of teaching for yourself potentially, but also, for
I think,
others?
my own experience of myself, of seeing where I was and where I am now, I think that's the most wondrous one for me. But, I've seen some extraordinary things happen with people, really extraordinary things. I mean, I've seen people, and, I would never advocate, but I've seen people being very, very unwell, and they've, through doing the work and doing what they needed to do, meditation and affiliated practices, they're well again, and mentally, physically, emotionally. Their relationship with themselves, they're able to restore that, and the relationships with everything else gets restored as well. And it's just such a wonderful thing. And the thing I think I love most about it is it's not me doing that for them. I'm showing them how they can do it for themselves. And ultimate knowledge delivers self-sufficiency, not dependency.
It's empowering, right?
That's right. And it's like back to that analogy of showing someone how to ride a bike.
Yeah.
The intention is never to hang on to the back of the bike forever. The intention is to fit them for the bike, get them on the bike, give them encouragement, support the bike. I'm going to hold this. I'm not letting you go until you're... And then the intention is always to let them go. And I'm sure we all remember that moment where we were convinced we couldn't ride a bike and it wasn't possible. And then that moment where we're riding and we suddenly look back and the person that was holding the bike was 30 meters behind us.
And that's when you freak out,
and
right?
Then we go, and then we follow her, right?
Exactly.
And, and then we need to have another little go. But this is the beauty of Vedic meditation, is we develop the ability to practice this technique anywhere, anytime. And it's something that we can do for ourselves. Once someone has learned, and I teach kids at 5 years of age, once they've learned, they've got this for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
And it's becoming a life skill that just is becoming just so important to access that inner stillness, that inner stability, to develop the ability to be unoverwhelmable. I made up a word a few years ago. What's the goal of meditation? Become unoverwhelmable, unable to be overwhelmed by anything. That's the goal of meditation.
And it's really interesting because when we're looking at where the world is at the moment, right? How we were saying, we've had the pandemic, we have a climate crisis, we've got this, we've got that. You have to find that peace within yourself, like the outside world's not going to give it to you.
And that's what Mother Nature is doing. She's rendering us choice. She's saying it's not out here anymore.
Yeah.
Don't even kid yourself.
Yeah.
And it's driving us into asking the questions about, well, where is that? And the answer is, and this is, we might finish on this point, you and I could talk for days. At different times in human history, in all different cultures at different times, often in times of crisis, great teaching lines have risen up, and they've all said exactly the same thing in all different kinds of ways, but they've all said exactly the same thing, which is, I am here to remind you that which you truly seek is within you. They've all said exactly the same thing. Now you break that little saying down. I'm here to remind you, meaning we once knew but we've forgotten. I'm here to remind you, not tell you. I'm here to remind you that which you truly seek. What is it that we seek? Stability, security, non-change, contentment, happiness and freedom. I'm here to remind you that which you truly seek is within you. It's inside of you. Stop looking outside here for it. It's not out here. This outside world is a place to bring the happiness, contentment, fulfillment, and our inner stability, to take it on an excursion into the world and to be of service with that to the world. Not coming to the world needing, all needy and full of neediness, trying to get that from the world. That's the mistake that we've been making, and that has to change. That's what Mother Nature is trying to teach us right now.
I think that is a beautiful point to wrap up. Tim, thank you so much for your time today.
My great pleasure, Sylvia.
It has been absolutely amazing talking to you. And yes, I agree, we could be talking all day. Tell us though, if somebody is interested, what are the first steps? What's the best way to get in touch with you, to start the process of, learning how to do Vedic meditation? Tell us a little bit about that.
So the best way is just to come to an introductory talk of mine, and you can either come via Zoom or in person. And I spend an hour and I just talk to people about the technique and the benefits and where it comes from. And then if someone feels inclined, then they can come and learn with me. There's also on my website, which is timbrownmeditation.com, there's a little 5-minute video there. And it's just a short version of that 1 hour introductory talk. And you can even watch that. And if you watch that and you go, yep, I'd like to learn, then you can just register for a course. Or if you want to know a bit more about it, then you can come along in person or via Zoom to the introductory talk for an hour. Then if someone then wants to learn with me, they come to a 4-session course with me. And I do that either over 4 nights, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday night from 6 till 8 p.m. Or on a weekend, I do a 2-day weekend program. So we do Saturday morning and Saturday afternoon, and then Sunday morning and Sunday afternoon. 4 sessions, either over 4 nights or 2 days. And at the end of that course, I've got people up and running, and to extend our analogy, riding the meditation bike. They're up and running and practicing. And my commitment to people is I will not let them go until they've got this. And by the way, I love a challenge.
So you're never a lost cause,
no,
right?
And I will not let them go until they've got it.
Yeah.
And I've taught over 6,000 people to meditate from 5 years of age to 95 years of age, and everybody can meditate. Correct mantra, passed on correctly with correct instruction. Then once someone's up and running, they're practicing 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes at night. And then every Monday night, once someone's learnt with me, there's a group meditation, and people can either come in person or they can come via Zoom. And there's group meditation followed by questions and answers.
That's every Monday.
Every Monday. And so once someone's learnt with me, they've got a lifetime membership to the Monday night meetings. And some people come every week or once a fortnight or once a month or once a year or once a decade, or some people never come again.
Yeah.
But I don't just then, push people out the door. Once they're up and running, they can come as often or as little as they like. But there's that follow-up so that they can dip in and dip out of that. And if questions come up about their practice, there's that support. And that's the way this has been taught for thousands of years, and I keep with that tradition.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Thank you so much for letting us know. That's really
my great pleasure.
Awesome. So, 3 points of wisdom. Oh my God, Tim, I honestly don't know how to summarize that. There was so much amazing information there, and it was so deep and really pretty profound. The 3 things that really stood out for me was, so the first point was to really learn to transcend and move beyond the thinking, thinking about that cinema, not sitting in the first row where you're really overwhelmed with everything that's going on, but moving back, stepping back into like a seat on the back that you can see your emotions, your systems and your behaviors, and really start, integrating them as well and not being overwhelmed by them. So instead of the fight and flight, then having the rest and digest, or how you called it, the stay and play, which I found really beautiful. The second thing was looking at, meditation, which is for the mind, and then pranayama, which is for the breath, and then asana yoga, which is for the body, and really integrating all 3 of them in order to fully integrate your mind, your body, and your spirits. And your soul within that. And then the third point was looking at the pillars of well-being. And we hear a lot about exercise and good nutrition, which are 2 of the pillars, but then there's the third one, which is meditation, which is all about rest and relaxation. And it is, in what you've said as well, it's like we are hearing it, like the universe is kind of, Mother Nature is shouting it very loudly from the rooftops at the moment, that we do need to change something, we do need to do something, we need to work on ourselves. We need to be well within ourselves in order for the world to heal and for the collective to heal as well.
Be the change that we want to see in the world.
Exactly. So that's the 3.
Great. A lovely synopsis.
It's like I said, there was so much in there, but they're kind of the 3 points that I've written down that I found really interesting. So we've mentioned a few things today and a few resources. Tim, I'll also put your website, which was timbrownmeditation.com, and your Instagram handle, which is also at timbrownmeditation, in the podcast notes. do get in touch with Tim if you would like to start to meditate. You truly have a master here teaching you.
Thank
so
you.
can really recommend that. I'm going to look into that myself,
Oh,
by the
it'll be
way.
a
I
pleasure.
haven't done it, right? So I'm like, I'm talking here, but I'm like, yeah, it's definitely on my list to do.
It'll be a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Tim. Thank you everybody else for listening today. I really hope you got something out of the episode. There was so much knowledge, so much wisdom, so much information in there. I think I'll have to listen back to it 2 or 3 times in order to really get everything out of it. Please do share the podcast with your family, with your friends, with anybody that you think might benefit from that information, with anybody that you think might want to start meditating or might need to start meditating, you know. I really hope this episode brought some sunshine to your soul. I'm sending love and light your way, and
Beautiful.
until next time.
Great. There's a little way that we say thank you in our tradition, which is, and we'll sign off with that, is Jai Gurudev. Jai Gurudev means thank you to the line of teaching and the knowledge that it's brought forward. And that's the way we say thank you in our tradition.
I love it.
Beautiful.
Thank you very much.
My
Tim.
pleasure. Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev.